everybody. Welcome to the Spoils TCG Winter Championship hosted by TeamCovenant.com. I am Zach, and I have Steven here with me, who is playing to the left on the screen. Steven, what's going on?
Yeah. This is really cool because we were planning on broadcasting this championships game regardless, just to get it out there and get it on the airwaves and show people how awesome the Spoils is. And it just so happens I made it to the finals that day, so I can give a little bit more insight than I guess normally we would be able to get. As you can see, first of all, on the left is this really cool playmat, and it's one that I got for being the top two. So everyone across the country playing Winter Championships, whoever gets in the top two is going to get one of those playmats, as far as I know, and they are really, really nice looking, really cool. And I really enjoyed playing on that and getting that.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I saw that art, I was just in awe. But then I saw the playmat, and I was just really hoping I'd make the top two. Didn't work out for me, but you made it, and now you are kind of hanging over my head. But anyways, you and John rolled the die to see who would go first, or who got a pick, and you won, so you went first. And you're looking at your opening hand here. You guys are both deciding on your mulligan. You guys are both running the Elitism faction, which I was able to see a few times that day. And man, what are your thoughts on that? That is a powerful faction.
Well, it's the Alliance of Handy Weirdos, and I would say I'm pretty convinced, and sealed, and probably draft as well. The ability to pay 3 to give +1/+1 is such a beautiful ability. Not only does it align with the draw card cost, so you can hold 3. If you need the bump, then you can use it, and if not, then you can get a card out of the deal, which isn't a bad thing at all. But more than anything, it's a really big deterrent to a lot of the removal that's available in Seed and Seed 2. You've got Vorpal Sword, Fired Hand, things that are doing damage or taking away life, and so you can hold 3 back as an insurance policy. In case one of your characters gets, one of your opponents uses a tactic that destroys a character of X life or such and such, you can go ahead and bump the life at that point and be good and save your character. Also, it means anytime you have 3 resources, your opponent has to play like your characters are +1/+1, and that is a huge, huge deal and can really screw with battle math, especially in these kinds of games where you're dropping a lot of similar characters, a lot of 2/1/3s, 1/1/3s, and then eventually up into the 4/4/3s and 5/5/3s. And just having that ability to kind of make your character a little bit better is huge, and even just having the option is a big deal. So here you'll see, I think both of us, played a resource on our first turn and held back and drew at the end of the opponent's turn, and we're both playing resources. I had a really interesting deck here. I went Elitism and Arcanist, and then I splashed into Rage, but I also splashed a couple of Arcanist into that deck because I had Inadequate Wand. And it was good enough for me to start one Arcanist and just put 3 or 4 in my deck, so that later in the game, whenever I had that Arcanist draw and maybe I ran across that Inadequate Wand, I could go ahead and play it down. And that is a huge, huge item. There's not a lot of item removal in Seed, in Seed 2, and just having that wand there, and the ability to take a character back and get any tactic that you need, even after your character blocks or attacks. Anytime your opponent uses a tactic on your character, pay 2, take them back, and grab whatever removal or whatever tactic you need, and that's huge.
Now, I find it interesting here that both you and John played a resource on your opening turn and passed, drew a card at the end of the turn, played a resource on your next turn, passed, played a resource on the end of the turn, and then played another resource. So, he's kind of reacting to you, so you're doing it, and then he's responding to it, so he's not losing the resource race. But here you drop what is potentially one of the best characters in the set.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then he comes back with one of the other best characters in the set, the Fired Hand. So it's interesting because I think at this point it looks like a really tight game.
Right, Recyclable Golem versus Fired Hand here, and I saw that Recyclable Golem in my first hand, and I immediately kept it after the mulligan. Like, I didn't want to mulligan it, and I knew that I was going to play a high curve. I had that. I think I had the Abominable Hamster in my hand. I had a few other things, and so on that turn 2, I really wanted to play a resource with those 4 resources, and then come back at the opening of the next turn, play a resource to accelerate up to 6 real quick, and then get the Golem on the field. And I also had this little number, which was the Vorpal Sword. And at this point, I was feeling great because I had a recyclable golem who was already bigger than Fired Hand, and now he's even bigger with Vorpal Sword. If you get rid of it, then I even gain a resource with Vorpal Sword, and my recyclable golem becomes a face-down resource. So I gain 2 resources if you take that out, and I can flip them back up to do great things. I can get the recyclable golem back out, and it can still kill Fired Hand with a 4/4. And then I can also use Vorpal Sword, the Snicker Snack ability, and do some damage. So
yeah, I mean, when you attack there, he really had no option. If he blocks, he loses a character. And, I mean, it goes face down, but he has to take 8. And so you do make good points, though, with the cards that both go down as resources. You know, removal on that character is just...
It's not attractive.
It's just not good anymore because you're getting 2 resources.
That's I really like that play there because it really is it really puts your opponent in a tough spot. It's not an attractive removal option at all. And on top of that, I mean, you're giving me a Vorpal Sword face down and a recyclable golem. And here's where it gets interesting because John goes ahead and plays Peppermint Insanity and swings back at me for 8.
So we tie again. But what's curious to me is that you were able to do the same thing, except for you have 3 resources open for a draw.
Yeah.
Whereas he only has 1 open. I don't know if he gets to use it or not. Maybe if you removed his character, it's going to go under and he'll get enough to do something. And I don't remember what he does with it, but I think it's, in this case, although the Peppermint Sanity is insane, that card advantage is going to be huge for you.
Yeah, what he did here, he definitely took the board advantage from me here. Because he's going to be able to restore again, you know, every time that his turn ends, he can restore. So he can attack me, and I can't really attack him back because I don't want to lose. I don't really want to lose anything here. And you notice John plays a lot of face down resources, and I'm worried about any number of things that could be hiding down there. All it takes really is 1 slip up here. And that Peppermint Sanity is going to deal me lethal damage because he can swing in for 8 with Fired Hand, pop the pepper, and swing in again.
And were you setting no removal cards in hand right here?
I don't believe I had a removal. Eventually, I think in a couple you notice I'm really looking at it. In a couple of, maybe next draw or a draw from now, I managed upon an implosive explosion. But it wasn't enough to take out that Fired Hand with Peppermint Sanity. And I was really interested in that card at that point. I knew I couldn't attack here. I certainly didn't want to. I believe I was sitting at 7 health. I think Vorpal Sword's +2/+1. And he was doing 8, 5 + 3 from the Peppermint Sanity. So I couldn't attack, but I also knew that I couldn't block. So I was really confused, you know, how I was going to handle this. I could hold 3 for the pump, I could hold 6 for 2 pumps, but I knew that he was going to have 4 resources whenever it came back around to his turn, and he could just match me. So I was really kind of confused, you know, as to what
I wonder
to do here.
if you had attacked here, if you would block. Because, you know, if you'd had removal, then obviously it's just a really bad thing for him. But at the same time, I guess if you attack and he has removal, he's going to deal lethal damage next turn.
Absolutely. I think he has nothing to lose on a block here. Because if I have removal, you know, it's just a matter of time before I use it. It's either whenever I attack him or whenever he attacks me. And so I don't think he has really much of anything to gain by not taking the chance and blocking me if I attack here. Kind of forcing me to use that removal, and we'll see. Like I said, I do have enough pumps here, I think, to at least match him. He's at, I believe he's at 7, and I'm sitting at 8 or 9. So I could kill him if he blocks, but it's going to be a nasty thing because I'm going to die as well. Now, you may be thinking, well, my 2 characters are going to go down as resources, and that's true, but there is just a lot at stake here. Who knows what he has in his hand? Like you said, if he has removal. I remember the only thing I had in my hand really at this point was a Vigilant Raider, and I really didn't feel confident. I really wanted to keep that golem on the board for as long as possible. So you can tell that I'm really wondering whether or not I should attack here.
Yeah, I mean, this is by far the longest turn of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the most serious because, you know, you guys are just kind of playing resources and drawing cards up front, and then you both swing for 8, and now you're at this odd 12 influence position, and it's you can see him shuffling his cards, and you're really thinking this one over. But
yeah.
I know the tension in the room at this point was just, you could feel it.
It's really interesting too. It's like, if I attack and he doesn't block, if I don't play a character, then I lose the game. And I know that I was in a tight spot and I was thinking about whether or not I actually had enough resources to play a character and do what I wanted to do. If I attack and he blocks and we kind of kill each other, I get 2 resources. He gets a fired hand face down, so he can now start using that removal, which I certainly didn't want. And I just had a feeling that he could do something about it. He only has 1 open, but I don't know, I was just worried. Sometimes that happens,
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if you attack and he doesn't block, 1 removal is game. Like I said, assuming you play 1 character. So
there's the Vigilant Raider. And this was something I knew that I didn't want to attack at this point. I definitely had gotten rid of that option. But I wanted to get another body out just in case he had removal so that I can block and prevent the game from being over. And you'll see he's going to swing in here sometime soon, and there's a really tough choice as to how exactly to block. Whether or not to chump block with Vigilant Raider. See, it becomes much less... There he goes, he's going for the attack. And
I think here, too, is the surprising move of the game. At least I remember seeing his face, and it seemed like he was surprised to see you do what you do here.
Yeah, certainly. I think what he was expecting me to do, and certainly what I was looking at as an option, was just chump blocking with Vigilant Raider. So he kills that character. My recyclable golem is still cool. The problem with that is that whenever it comes back to my turn, he's going to untap. He's going to undeplete due to the Pepper of Insanity. So really what I've done is put 5 resources on the board, lost them, and everything is reset. So it really doesn't do me any good here to just chump block a Vigilant Raider. Then I'm behind 5 resources, and it's no good. If I block with Recyclable Golem, you notice his resources laid out. He's got enough to pump his health. He's at 4 health, plus 3 for Pepper of Insanity, 7. And I believe I'm doing, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm doing 9. So, as I remember, he could pump enough to negate it. And even if he couldn't necessarily, we're looking at 8 resources open. A handful of cards. He's a really good player. And a lot of face-down resources. It's really, really stressful. Because if he gets rid of that golem, having Insanity and Fired Hand on the board like that, and if he plays another character, I just have lost complete tempo, and it's just a beatdown from there. And staring at my hand of no removal, I knew that it was not a place I wanted to be, where I was digging for removal for a couple of turns, hoping not to die too quick. So, what I ended up doing was blocking with both.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that changes. Obviously he's got tax in his hand and resources he wanted to use, so he's not expecting you to do this, and you block with both, and now he makes what is probably the mistake that cost him the game, or the mistake that really puts him at a disadvantage.
Yeah, I think it's next turn.
That's not right here?
I don't think he plays it here. Well, let's see if it is.
No, I think he pumps. You're right.
Yeah, he pumps, but what this does basically is it gives... I have a Recyclable Golem with 7 health and a Vigilant Raider with 4. So there's really no way that he can pump out and do enough damage to kill both of my characters. Now, my 2 characters combined, of course, can do plenty of damage and can kill his Fired Hand. So what I'm assuming is going to happen here is he's going to kill my Recyclable Golem. I'm going to kill his Fired Hand, and I've got Vigilant Raider out on the board. He's got 8 open resources. He'll probably play a character, and we're about back to reset here. So that's what I'm hoping for, except I get 2 resources out of the deal. He gets 1 resource out of the deal, but I get that Pepper of Insanity off the board, which is a big deal. That's a huge bomb rare in this format. And
then you're also looking at, you're the active player. Mm-hmm. So you get to get characters out first. And so you'll have the first ability to attack, assuming he doesn't have removal. And I think too, you've got some cards in your hand that you realize can be pretty bomb, even if the board does get cleared. Yeah,
I've got this deck that I made had a really interesting. It had a really interesting record, I guess. The first 3 games, it really played as a really low, like a low build, low resource kind of swarm deck. And I got some little guys out, and I kept the pressure on with a lot of removal. I got a lot of removal in my sealed pool. And so it kind of just like out-tempoed. And then my last two games, it had a really strong covert draw. I saw the swoop staggler, flattering stoop swaggler, whatever, and I saw the abominable hamster in both games. So it was kind of going both ways. And in this game, I have the hamster in my hand right now. So I knew that it really, in games like this and in this kind of a sealed environment, something like an abominable hamster can be a bit of a bomb, because you're taking 3 damage if the board's locked down. You're going to keep taking 3. You start at 20. It only takes 3 or 4 turns to really get you in the red, and you just got to remove it. You've got to remove it. So me having Vigilant Raider out as a strong character, and then if I was able to drop the hamster after this, it's going to give me a good blocking character in the Vigilant Raider, as well as some good guaranteed almost damage from the covert abominable hamster.
Well, and something about covert characters with this faction is also to be said, because
absolutely,
especially late game when you've got 9, 12, 14 resources, and you can pump 2 or 3 times without really losing a turn, and a 3 damage suddenly becomes a 5 or a 6 damage, and when you've only got 12 left, that's huge. So I know I watched your last your 2 top 4 games and then your last round, and you were saying that the cloak didn't come into play early, but then those last 3 games you got it into play each time. I think there's definitely something to be said for any sealed pool that can go Arcanist elitism, have some cloaked guys, and have this faction, because it's if you do get it, it's just they've got to get rid of it, and it's not
certainly
like a power character like a Fired Hand with a Pepper of Insanity on it. It's just this 1 4 or 5 cost character, and they just have to deal with it.
Yeah. And I really started playing this deck a little bit more aggressive as far as resources. Whenever I started seeing it do that, and those opening hands, a lot of them, 2 of them had the hamster and the swoop staggler in it, or whatever that guy is. And you'll see here we traded. He went for the golem, and I went for the Pepper of Insanity Fired Hand, which was great. And so what he does here is he reveals his Fired Hand and does 2 more damage, which is 2 discards. And I'm thinking, ooh, now it's not quite as good as I wanted it to be. So we're basically just going to reset the board here. I don't have a response. I've got 2 resources open, but not enough to pump. So there's that. And now we're back. We're back where we were. I believe I have more cards in hand. Yeah, he's got 1.
I think he has 1.
He's got 1 because he used 2 on that Fired Hand, and we're about equal on build. I may be up 1.
I think you have a few resources.
So I feel really good. It's good to get that kind of gamble paid off for me. It could have easily have not. John's a really good player, and of course is made a good decision in what he was doing. It's just a matter of whether or not he had removal, and it happened that he didn't this time. Now this right here, I just saw that I drew the Implosive Explosion, which is going to potentially help me out. It's a solid removal, and I just put a recyclable golem down. So if I need to, I can do 6 damage.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but I've got a golem down there that's a character, and in this game of kind of card advantage, here we go. I dropped the hamster for 5. As I was saying, in a game of card advantage, being able to have a recyclable golem that you play, it goes in your pile, and then you can play again without having to draw a card is a really big deal. And let me just comment on John's incredible playmat there. It's a thing of beauty, for sure.
Yeah, I think it was custom made.
Surely. I asked him if he got RTFC from Hans, but he said he didn't. So it's it revolves around a lot more than just Hans these days. So I pulled the golem out. He's now a 4/4/3, and he can block covert parties. And then I've got a hamster too. So this is a pretty cool offense, especially with John having 1 card in hand. And so now he's got 2 really solid threats to deal with. He's got a hamster and he's got a golem. And it's a matter of, it's really nice here because that golem's going to be aggressive on the non-covert front. But he can't really waste his removal on it because he's got a hamster he's got to deal with too. So.
Yeah, and This is, like I was saying earlier, being the active player after that exchange is huge because even if he plays two characters, and especially because one of yours was covert, you're going to get the first strike in, so to speak. So it makes things interesting for him, and obviously, I mean, with less cards in his hand, he probably doesn't have very much removal. So he's really in a tight spot here.
Certainly.
So what are you thinking at this point?
I could not actually. That exchange and kind of the follow up to it could not really have gone better for me right now. Seeing that hamster on the board is solid. It's really solid because he's definitely going to have to waste some kind of removal on it, which is going to keep my golem safe. I know I've got one removal in my hand, which can be very potent. I've got that implosive explosion, and I believe I have like a 3 or 4 cost down in my resource stack from earlier. I've definitely got the Vorpal Sword, or it was a Vorpal Sword. So I know I've got at least 4 damage if I need it for 3, and so anything that he drops I can potentially respond to and clear out in order to really swing in for some lethal damage.
Something of note here too is it seems like he's got a lot of his resources face down, which with flip up, I mean that can be pretty scary, but at the same time, he's only got so much threshold.
Yeah.
So some of the nastier cards in the factions, I think he's got 2 or 3 rage out, so he can get most of those cards. But he only, I think he has 1 rogue and 1 elitism out, so it really limits the power of cards you could be afraid of at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. He's got, I think he asked me to count my resources there, which is always a good thing to do. It's really important to keep track of those kinds of things when you're playing a game. Take a note of how many resources your opponent has, how many cards they have in hand, and you can get a kind of a better idea of what you may be up against. And whenever your opponent's tapped out of resources, it is just the greatest feeling ever. So here he pays a ton, or he pays for the Unflinching Bowman. Is that a 5 cost, I believe?
Yeah.
So you can pay 1 and shoot some of my dudes. Luckily for me, I've got the Elitism faction, which definitely makes that less of an option for him. And I also have some nice 3 and 4 health characters. So if I was flooding the board with 1 cost right now, it would be a really bad thing. It looks like John just kind of played him out because it's about the only character he had. But he definitely overpaid for a character's usefulness in this situation. It's only a 2/2/3. So it's really not going to do too much for him here. He can't really block with it. He can maybe use some Fired Hand and also pay for killing with the Bowman, but it's not very good removal for him right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not the character he would probably hope to have in his hand at this point. But it's definitely, I mean, if that's what he had in his hand, that's what he's got to go with.
Yeah, and that is sealed, like just having characters out is incredibly important. So I'm going to swing in with the hamster here. I'm hoping he doesn't have removal here. I'm half expecting it, but whenever he went ahead and let it go through, I was pretty happy about that. So that again is the power of covert, and I'm going to swing in with the golem here because I see a 2/2 in front of me. I've got tons of resources I can pump, and we'll see what he does here.
Yeah, and assuming he doesn't block, you can still pump.
Exactly. And I can tell you the exact moment he declares no blockers, which was right there.
You were ready to pump.
So I'm going to pay 3 to pump and pay 3 to pump, which is going to put that golem up to 6.
And that's critical because that hamster can swing in for game if he doesn't deal with it.
Exactly. I wanted to pump it up to where he was left with 3, which means he's either going to lose the game or he's going to remove the hamster.
Yeah, and I mean,
so those are his options.
Unless he's holding 2 Dragon Juice in hand, which is impossible. But he's really, it's tough. He's almost got to draw and removal here.
Yep. And the thing is, if he removes the hamster, he's also got to put another. He's got to put a character down who can block that golem better, or he's just going to start losing characters. And I've got Vorpal Sword under. So you know that I can do 2 to that Bowman if I need to. And I happen to have some more removal in my hand, that implosive explosion. So I'm feeling pretty good. If he does any crazy tricks with the Bowman here, maybe if he has another Pepper of Insanity or something, I've got some decent removal ready, and I've actually held 3 over there in my resource stack just in case he tries anything. Look at how centered I just put my cards. I didn't notice I did that. Right there in the middle. Interesting. Learn about yourself.
Watching from above.
I mean, really, he has to take out the hamster right here. He has to do it now. Or at least on my turn. And look, he's spending a ton of resources for perforate, and unfortunately,
here's the mistake.
Yeah, he read it wrong. A lot of us, I mean, we're getting back to the spoils from being kind of rusty, playing 2 years ago. John was a Gen Con top 8 at this year's Gen Con. Excellent spoils player. Actually went into top 8 undefeated, and just misread the card, and it's one of those...
He thought he could divide the damage.
Yeah, thought he could divide the damage. It's one of those rusty moments where it's kind of unfortunate, but he goes ahead and eats the mistake and decides to assign it to the hamster like he has to.
Yeah, and the interesting part here is if he'd just spent what he needed to get rid of the hamster, he may have been able to play another character, and that could have been huge here. So we'll see how that 8 cost removal of the hamster is going to affect the game.
Or if nothing else, he could at least block the recyclable golem. I think he's actually holding 2 for that anyway. But see, I play Implosive Explosion. He only has 2 left. Goes off, and so that's going to be 4 swinging in, and that's the game.
What a crazy game.
It was.
That's a game of few turns. If you take those few turns where you guys took maybe 10 minutes, or 5 to 7 minutes, that's maybe a 15-20 minute game.
Yep. And it's amazing because, I mean, my first game I won a time against John Wilson, so that deck played over an hour, probably about an hour. And then my next games were pretty quick. Then I had a really long game, and then I had this game, which was real quick. And sometimes it's just how the decks go. Yeah,
and it was a great game. It was really intense, really fun to watch, and it was lots of action, really quick. And it was just a really good end to a good day where lots of local players got back together and played this awesome game.
It was, and I'm glad, so glad to be getting first place at the Winter Championships, the first, I guess, Arcane Tinman Winter Championships. It's a good sign. We had 12 players. It was a great turnout. Everyone was just happy to be back playing the game, and God, there's nothing like an event like this that really kind of brings home how much you love the spoils. And everyone there did, and we're going to continue to grow this fan base and player base, and just make it happen, because this game is too good to not have all the attention it deserves.
I guess until the spring.
That's right. Spring championships are coming up next. That means get the constructed decks ready. A fun and exciting time for any card game. And I guess be checking back with teamcovenant.com, where we'll be posting our ideas. We got our podcast every week, and we've got some great community members, which you should join, and are posting decks and blogs about the game. And we've got a nice little international spoils community. So come check it out, and good luck.
Cheers. Good luck with your winter champs.